Hello and welcome back to the podcast, the YouTube and the Spotify. We are back with another episode of Sparks Conversation. Thank you for checking in. I have my co-host and co-coach Rowan with me today. He is coming
Hello.
off the back of a thrilling Christmas. The
I
same
loved it.
day, probably the most festive elves you will meet in the audio space at the moment. So how are you, mate? How's things?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, man. Like you said, I had an absolutely delightful Christmas. I had the best non-Christmas Christmas dinner that a
That's
man
it.
could have.
Are you going to
Uh,
tell listeners what you had, or do you think you'll get a torrent of abuse?
I just don't really want to depress them, if I'm honest.
Okay.
So I'll preface this and just say Christmas is a time for family. It
Yeah.
doesn't need
And
to
in
have a
Rowan's
Christmas dinner
household,
as such.
fish pie.
I will caveat that and say uh, the family member. So we went to my grandma's for Christmas, and she doesn't have a working kitchen. You may then think, why would you go there in the first place? I don't know. I didn't make the plans. I just turned up
But Christmas
with a
is the time
Tupperware
for
full of.
family, mate. So you've got to go
Well,
and eat fish
exactly,
pie.
exactly.
But
But I
who
did
puts an
also
old
take a
person
Tupperware of
in a
food.
house without a working kitchen, though? Is that not a basic human right?
Well, she does have I think, a very nice microwave oven and a little stovetop hob thing, induction heater. That's the one.
Oh, is it so she
I
doesn't
don't
burn the
know.
place down?
Yeah, she can't be trusted.
Fair enough. Yeah. Hopefully one day I shall be in that position where I cannot be trusted with anything, and therefore I'm just giving
You're at that stage. You're at
basic
that stage
basic,
now.
basic appliances. Yeah, Christmas is done, thank God. And now it
How
is
was your
time.
Christmas?
It was all right, mate. Yeah. I think like the weather was a bit shy, wasn't it? Like, let's be honest.
Ah,
I don't know what it was like with you,
jovial.
but it was actually hammering it down. Um, Business as usual for me, mate. Like, got up, did I made it so I didn't actually train on Christmas Day like I would have liked to. But I just moved my split around, so I had kind of Christmas Day off. So I just woke up, did my cardio as usual, um, did my steps as usual in the pissing rain as usual, and then just kind of like just chilled with the family and stuff. Like my sister came down from London because I haven't seen her necessarily for a while because of the C word. And yeah, man, just a normal day, really. Like, because I eat a roast dinner like most evenings. So like, the only difference for me is like I had turkey and I had a bit of pudding. However, I didn't actually have any pudding because I made a banoffee pie, and before I could have a piece, my dad dropped the whole thing on the floor. So
Oh,
probably shouldn't have given my dad that much alcohol, but you live and you learn, don't you? So he was in the bad
I
boat.
think as well the one time you were gonna have pudding, it got ended.
Exactly. And I had like you could technically call it like deconstructed, but it was just like a mush because it's just because I'd made it with like what's it called, Biscoff biscuit
Muff.
base as opposed to digestive base. Um, Shocking, mate. Oh
Okay.
well, but so I had to like pick out bits because it was just a crumbled mess. Because banoffee pie
Just scrape it off the
has no
floor.
substance. Like it was just like a pile of cream and condensed milk, but it tasted nice, man. What
That's
did
the main thing.
Yeah, and we had just normal like roasts. I had my own vegetables, um, and turkey, and then my sister
Awesome.
had like nut roast and stuff. And mate, the real MVP of Christmas is ham. Like ham is the king or queen. But it's the king, isn't it? I don't
Okay.
know, gender neutral. Um,
Hmm.
it is the real MVP for any roast dinner I find around Christmas because it's just very versatile. It can go at the main meal, it can go in a sandwich, it can keep you going for the whole week.
Yeah,
And that's what
it
I'm
is a
here.
very good leftover.
That's what I'm here for, mate. But ours is all gone now. So back to usual, back to the routine, back to training, which is going well. So we have got some questions, haven't we? So do you want to rattle off
Uh,
the first question from our clients and our listeners, and then we'll get stuck into it?
yeah, well, sticking with the Christmas theme as we're here, one of the questions was, what should you do if you suddenly gained 4 kilos over the Christmas period?
Interesting. I
Uh,
think this came from a client. So I think I know who this client is. So first of all, like don't worry about it. Like if that has happened, like realistically, can it all be fat? Unless you've eaten like I don't know, probably around like 60,000 calories. It's not all gonna come from fat, is it? Like realistically.
Yeah,
Um, it could be done, but it
yeah,
I think a lot of the time it's more the mentality around the scale weight going up, which is the anxiety. The actual
yeah,
reality is that like it's probably just food in your digestive system. Because if you've eaten a lot, there's going to be a lot of weight just from that additional food in your stomach, especially if you're. It's not just like low GI food, is it? It's like potatoes, it's like parsnips. It's you probably have
yeah.
more veg in that meal than you would normally.
Plus, as well, the amount of sodium that's going to be in everything,
100%.
including your favorite ham,
Oh yeah,
you've probably gained, you're probably retaining water from all that sodium. You're probably holding more water because you're suddenly eating 3 times the amount of carbs you're eating. And for every carbohydrate you consume, you're probably going to hold anywhere between like maybe 2 to 4 grams of water. So
exactly.
that could definitely add an easy amount.
Exactly, because like it all does add up, and the thing is, then is like right, so it's happened. You can't undo what's happened. I would just like get back into your usual structure or somewhat of routine because, like we said on the Christmas pod, it like it becomes an issue when Christmas is not just one day of over consuming. It becomes like that week and
Yeah,
this period that we're in now between because most people are off work now, like between Christmas and New Year. If you're not, I feel for you, but if you are, enjoy yourselves, relax. But like a lot of the time for some household, Christmas is not just that day, it's like that extension period. And that's when it becomes like, right now you're over consuming for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 over a week. And that's when it
yeah,
could potentially be like, right now we are actually in a threshold for putting on some body fat, which isn't the end of the fucking world, like at all. But if the goal is a composition and if the goal is fat loss and like a body fat composition that you want or physique development, it's probably not optimal. But again, like I've said to a lot of my clients, who like it's been a stressful year for a lot of people. Like
yeah,
if you need this period, I said as a coach and as their coach, I was just like, when we come back, because I'm giving people the optional check-in this week, when we come back in January, we'll just play what's in front of us, regardless of what it is. We'll just see what it is. We won't talk about it because if you've gained weight, we probably know why it's happened. We don't need to delve into it anymore. It's
yeah.
happened. So we can literally, all my job is then to just plan the structure from that point onwards. And that's going to go either one of two ways. I'm going to have clients who come back 4 kilograms heavier because they'll be like, you just said, just going to play what's in front of us. Or we're going to have people who've been able to auto regulate and develop that autonomy around Christmas, which is quite an important factor in kind of long term weight management. Have you got anything else to say on that?
Um, I think you kind of nailed it for most of it. I do think not stressing about if the scale has bounced up is quite a big thing because then unless you have someone to hold yourself accountable like a coach, you're potentially going to lead yourself into restricting what you're going to be eating. You're going to start hammering more cardio than you may ever do. And it's probably just going to spiral off again into you get to New Year's, you've ground yourself into the floor in this week's period, and then you're just going to go crazy again. Like, as long as you had a good time over Christmas, try not to stress about it too much,
And the thing with
unless
that,
you're,
and I think of like stressing about it is like just accept that lots of people will do it differently. Like I would have approached
yeah,
Christmas differently. And probably the way I approach Christmas would stress a lot of people out and make them think like, oh no, I'm not like I've not done my cardio today or I've not nailed my steps. And it's just like that's my decision. Like likewise,
yeah,
you not doing it is your decision. And I don't care. And it's not stressing me out. It's only it's like that mindset then starts to get quite toxic around it and you start kind of
mm,
creating guilt around realistically a 1 day 24-hour period and like I said
yeah,
24 hours in the scope of the year that we've had I think most people should look at it as kind of just enjoy it, like, but be an adult, like we say with everything. Just don't be a toddler. um, but yeah, but yeah.
Literally.
I think we've nailed that one. I mean, I don't want to dwell too much on it because if
Yeah.
like weight gain is weight gain, it can easily come off. Like you could literally just drop into an aggressive calorie deficit and have that
Yeah.
off within like like a week, not 2 days. I wouldn't recommend it, but yeah. Next question, buddy.
Okay. Um, Biggest changes we've made to our training since we started,
Good,
potentially through new ideas or concepts.
good question. And I think this is stemmed again. This is from a client. I think this is stemmed from obviously on the podcast we talk about how we've we both like this is probably answering the question actually, well my question, but like we both accept that like we love training to failure and stuff like that, but we've both adopted like a potentially a higher volume approach more recently. And I think that's where this question's come from, which makes it quite a good one. But I don't want to put words in your mouth and I don't want to kind of jump in. So like what are your biggest kind of thought changes during your kind of fitness journey? Obviously, like yours was a bit different to mine because you were kind of the chubby kid.
Yeah,
Um,
I wasn't
you
being.
just went full bodybuilder real quick.
I dived into the deep end and just did nothing. I think the biggest one was being more kind of diligent with tracking my training. I think that was probably the biggest difference I made, rather than hopping about and doing a few different things each session, which I probably did for the first, honestly, like 4 years potentially. I don't think it was until my first year of university where I really stuck more to a rigid structure. And probably since then, it's when I've made the most progress.
Yeah, I think being able to just because when you actually like commit to like progression in that sense, it becomes a very simple game that we're in. Like it's not actually that complicated. You just need to look at what you did last time in the same thing. Like it's very boring, and that's why a lot of people don't stick to it because it is just like because when you start off, like you said, like you want to do all of the exercises every week, you change it, you think,
Yeah,
oh, I want to be the best, so I do everything. But really, the best just do the basics really well most of the time. And it's that understanding a lot of the time that does create the better athletes. And I would agree. Like I think one of my biggest thought changes from like when I was younger was that you just need to just be more efficient in what you actually do. And I think this
yeah,
ties into your point as well. It's like because when I first started, I was doing so much, like so much. And obviously I didn't understand all of the concepts about junk volume. I didn't understand
mm,
volume landmarks. I just trained. But then the minute like I got a coach and they said like, right, do 2 sets and make these sets like your best sets ever, and then move on. And the
yeah,
minute I the minute I kind of understood that and realized, right, I don't actually need 10 sets if I can do 2 sets like at my absolute best. Was really interesting. And that doesn't mean like 2 sets is the way for everything. It was just like it helped me as kind of an athlete drive up my efficiency in my performance, in my execution, and everything around that, because that then kind of funneled into everything else, like my pre-routine for the gym, about my recovery. Because I was thinking, if I've only got 2 sets, I haven't got much margin for error. So if I don't get a good night's sleep and I muck up that first set, I've ruined 50% of those like working sets.
yeah.
And it did kind of drip feed that efficiency and that optimization into every other aspect of my life, which is could be argued as a bad thing, if you know me. I'm pretty kind of strict with things, but sometimes you just got to accept that like certain things like do like suit you as a person. I do think this suits me as a person. The second thing that has changed the way I've thought a lot is like understanding mechanics of exercises. Like being able
Yeah,
to view an exercise or a machine and be thinking like, right now, what is this doing for me? Um, it's made the world a little bit more complicated, but personally, it's kind of really helped that you can kind of start to manipulate things and really understand why this is working. And for someone who likes to understand things that they're doing, especially in the gym, it's another avenue that you can just keep learning because of course there's a spectrum, but you're never going to be, I'm never going to confess to be like Newton or like some magic scientist about forces, but it is just like a really good avenue that you can learn in, and it will benefit you in the long run, because if you can analyze how people move, what muscles are working in relation to moment arms, force, torque, you can make decisions as a coach. You don't necessarily have to be able to explain torque and lever arms and moment arms to your clients, but you can say, right, I can see here that your quads are working way more than your glutes and hamstrings, because you understand the mechanics. And then you can say, right, why don't you try this? Just say like a simple cue, right, push your bum back more. Simple cue, and it will change that exercise for them massively. And I mean, I
Yeah,
have some clients that love me talking about like, right, you need to change this. There's talk here, stuff like that. I have other general population clients who genuinely couldn't give a crap. They just want to be able
yeah,
to do that exercise, get a good result, and then go to the pub. Like, and it's not my job to be turning everyone into kind of a biomechanic freak, but I think that really did kind of change things for me. And that all came from getting a coach, which was
I
quite.
think as well, stemming from that, understanding that not every machine or exercise is built for one person,
Mm,
and then it's either working ways around it and finding what is potentially the best way to do that for that person. Which
100%.
the easiest example is probably trying to work out someone's squat form. Like it's
Yeah.
always going to differ person to person.
And I think
But
that's helped,
even
like that's helped with like looking at your squat form, for example, because
yeah,
like you've
massively.
had a battle with your squat for like since we've like trained together and stuff like that, and we've like worked it out because of mechanics. We've worked out why potentially your quads are weaker, because you're a very hip dominant
Yeah,
squatter. Like it makes sense when you understand why. Before that, we were kind of like, why are you just so back dominant? And then and like
why are your erectors and glutes just taking over
yeah,
everything?
and why are your quads not growing? And then you're like, because of this. And then like we've been able to, what's the word? Not ramify, like solve, well,
Uh,
put steps
reverse
in place.
engineer.
Yeah, sort of, to then overcome that. And I think like it's super interesting. I super enjoy it. But again, it's like knowing
It
when to
is.
actually use that information and then when to filter it. As a coach,
Yeah.
it's like when I'm talking to you, we could talk about it for days.
Mm,
But it's like when you're from a coaching head, like most people don't actually care or need to care unless they want
yeah.
to. But
But then
yeah,
again, if you've got that kind of eye for seeing where things could potentially be tweaked, I know at least with some clients, they'll send me a video and I'll ask a question about, does that actually feel comfortable in that position? Can you move, I don't know, if it's a leg press, like can you move your back check, like the back support down a little bit? Just like little things where they may not think about it, but through your suggestion, they'll try it and then they'll come back and go, oh wow, but yeah, that's made a huge difference.
and then what you're
The
doing there
exercise
is
is so much more comfortable.
you're not you're reducing the friction to them actually doing it again. For a
Yeah,
lot of people, like the gym is alien. Like getting into a machine and letting something crush you that's quite heavy is not a natural experience for them. Um, because they haven't got enough depression in their head to actually feel the sessions like us.
yeah, masochist. Yeah,
um, but yeah, like, but those small changes that you can make that you filter down, like you said, like, oh, why don't you just try putting the seat down? And then they're like, oh, my hips don't hurt. Oh, I don't
yeah.
feel it in my knees anymore. Brilliant, like winning. Like, let's just leave that there. And last, have you got another one that you want to talk about off the top of
Um,
your head? We've spoken about these tracking workouts, less is more, and biomechanics of movement.
yeah. Well, I guess
What about a
the next
nutrition
point
one?
could,
Nutrition,
oh, nutrition.
curveball.
Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid.
Mm.
Work out what. So I 100% work best with a loose meal plan. I generally eat 100% 4 of the 5 meals. The fifth meal may vary a little bit more, but typically they'll be fairly similar. I know how much rice I need to put in my rice cooker. I weigh my meat cooked just because it saves me effort if I just
Converting it.
batch cook kilo and a half of chicken, cook some beef. Like, I try and make my life as simple as possible, because then, especially now where I'm eating so much, if I had to prep every meal fresh, I think I'd just be in the kitchen all day. But
Mm.
with reducing the amount of time I can do things, the only thing I really need to do is cook a different variety of vegetables per meal. I
Yeah.
think that's the easiest thing, is just find what meals you like, what you don't like, stick to what you do like, and then try and make it as simple as possible for you to fit in. So I
Yeah.
think eliminating those barriers, because definitely a lot of people are like, oh, I just find it so difficult to stick to eating healthily. It's like, okay, well, just find things you like. Or even if in the evening you get a massive sweet tooth, a lot of people think your final meal has to be savory, it has to be a cooked meal. But if that then causes you to crave chocolate afterwards, just incorporate that into, I don't know, a bowl of oats, some sort of protein, dark chocolate. Like, there are ways to work around things. I think not marrying yourself to the typical breakfast, lunch, dinner,
Yeah, I hate that.
sweet
I
potentially
do hate that.
breakfast, and it doesn't work.
Quite a limiting thought process, I think. Like, it's very Western. It's been created like we're not meant to eat sugar for breakfast. Like, that's literally just been created by cereal companies to make a lot of money. So the minute you can
Yeah,
transition away from stuff like that, I think you're exactly right. I agree with your point around like keep it simple, stupid. I think again, there's like levels, isn't there? Like, there's always going to be levels. Like, and once you dip your feet in, it's then what you do next. Like, you're absolutely right. I think like keeping it simple for those who are just starting out is the key, because people view this like healthy eating and kind of calorie deficit, potentially lose fat loss, as like a massive change. And if you can make it as like effortless as possible, you'll just fall into it very easily, and it's actually a lot easier than you think. Um, and I think like, understanding like if it's your macros does work, but then it very much becomes a case of like, can I fit anything in my macros? It becomes very toxic again. And
yeah,
again, it's like, it's all or nothing mentality, isn't it? Like, meal plan, or if it fits your macros, train to failure, or reps in reserve. Like, there can be a happy place in
yeah,
the middle. Like, I personally, I would say I am kind of on the if it fits your macros approach, but I have a meal structure that I follow, and
yeah,
obviously I have IBS, so I have to be a little bit more careful and a little bit more rigid in my structure. And my kind of main thought change from kind of from nutrition. Sorry, can't get my words out. Sorry, there was like a pigeon fighting another pigeon on the roof. I was like, go on,
who won?
son, go on, place your bets. Um, I'm easily distracted, so it's not good. Um, my biggest one is that like micronutrition does have an impact, because there was a huge period of my life where I loved if it fits your macros, and
Yeah,
I wasn't all out unhealthy because of it, because I was kind of making protein pancakes with fruit, stuff like that. But micronutrition definitely suffered. And coming off the back of prep, like, I realized like, fuck, my body just wants like nutrients. Like, prep didn't make me unhealthy. It was just unhealthy because of the severity of the calorie deficit and the stress of it, really. And
yeah,
coming out the other side with the digestive issues, I've realized that like, wow, my body actually needed so much more. In terms of just like diversity. And I know this kind of goes against your keep it simple, stupid, but that like there's so many nutrients out there that we just don't eat, like from analyzing like
yeah,
of client data, and it's like genuinely is worrying that it's not talked about at all. um if you've got a client who's just getting like no vitamin D when they come to you, and you're just like, right, we need to like get some vitamin D in, or like you haven't had a fish,
yeah,
you haven't had a gram of fish oil for like 5 years. Like, when was the last time you had salmon? And they're like, oh, I can't remember, probably when I was at school. And you're like, wow, like, that is like a deficiency there. Do you know what I mean? And
yeah,
I find it super interesting. But I do think like micronutrition just make just make sure you're thinking about it. And I think that was my biggest change. Like now I'm pretty much obsessed with it, mate. Like I am with
But to be
anything.
fair,
Sorry.
you definitely, when I started my push-up phase, even though I was having a serving of veg with each meal, you kind of pushed on me harder to increase that. And I've definitely noticed, even if it's just purely from a digestion standpoint, like I don't feel, yes, I feel full because of the amount of food, but I don't feel physically awful from it.
Exactly. And
Like
like
digestion's
you would have
good.
been full anyway. Like you
Yeah,
like you would have been full anyway. And I do think like an athlete who has a good micronutrient intake will have better biofeedback in the long run than someone who's literally just eating chicken and rice. Because there's very
yeah,
little in that in terms of any nutrients for the body. And if you think about it, like micronutrition is not just used for just general health. It's used for literally everything, immunity, like recovery, like it will make your
yeah.
body more efficient as an athlete in all of its internal processes. It's not just a tick box, is it? It's not just like, right, we've got some vitamin D, now you're good. Like it, they all work together to create like a functioning body. And like coming from someone whose body was not functioning like 3 months ago, like I do think more can be learned from that. And I think it does, especially in your position with calories getting super high. Like I've been there myself. Like, you can't be asked to eat like a vegetable, but you do need to have that kind of respect for your body and that understanding that it will benefit you. And I've been there where biofeedback has gone terribly wrong during a gaming phase. Like digestion's out the window. Like I'm bloated. Performance is pretty shoddy. Like it's not ideal. It's not great. Like
No.
and I do think micronutrition is key. And even more so for like Gen Pop clients. Like if you're living in London, like you need a lot of micronutrition to
Crust.
fight off the pollution. Like
You
so
need everything.
because I've done a little bit of research on my clientele, and all of my clients who live in London get iller more and more frequently with more severity.
Really?
Obviously, just because of the population density, but I recommend to all of those guys and girls that their micronutrition is way higher potentially and where possible than clients that are outside of London. I'm
Makes
not
sense.
saying it's a cure, but there is a lot of research between micronutrition and immune health. But that's another story entirely. So next question, buddy, because we're already on 27 minutes and we've only done 2 questions.
Oh Christ. This one slightly links to the start of the previous. Do we all need to train to failure?
Interesting. Do you want to go?
Yeah, my thought process of this has changed drastically over the last couple of years, where I went from probably never training to failure to hammering myself into the ground every session
Yeah.
to slowly trying to get out the other end where I don't train everything to failure, because I don't, a lot of the research has shown it's not potentially overly beneficial to train to failure. You can still make the exact same progress, possibly more, by not fully training to failure, albeit that's then when there's caveats of study design and things like that. However, I would say potentially not training to full failure on your main movements, your big progression movements, and then training to failure on maybe more of the smaller isolations or things in slightly higher rep ranges. Maybe this better way to go about it. I will again caveat that with, I was on a hack squat yesterday and trained to failure both sets. So sometimes you've just got to do it if you enjoy it.
Exactly. And I think that's I think the point that you made last is the key, is like the psychology and the mindset of the person who's doing it is the biggest determining factor in whether I think you should train to failure. So I think you've got like frame the conversation is that if you're not training to failure, you are training within a close proximity to failure. So whether that's 2 reps left, we're not saying you're 10 away from failure. You're not just picking up a 2 kilogram and going, oh, there's a set of 10 done. You are training with a relative intensity and with a relative proximity to failure that you're going to elicit some response. And then it becomes like, right, does this athlete or individual like pushing themselves within that mindset of, right, I want to just go all in every session? Yes, right, they can probably train to failure. But then it's like the programming considerations from that decision need to be thought about, because I think a problem a lot of people do is they think, right, I'm going to train to failure, but I'm going to train to failure with the same amount of volume that I did before. And it's not going to work. Like, you're going to die, especially if your volume is super high. So I, I mean, it's hard for me because I program both and I'm happy to do both, especially more so now because my thought process around it's changed. Because again, coming from prep, like I couldn't train to failure. I just wasn't there mentally. Oh, well, I was there mentally, but I wasn't there physically to be able to recover from it, one, and two, execute well enough to go to failure. Like I wasn't stable, and stuff like that. So I did have to experiment with kind of a slightly higher volume approach. And now I do think I've blown up from it. I think it's probably the best I've looked for, like 95 kilograms. But I think, do you need to train to failure? Probably not. If you want to, should you? Yes. If you don't want to, should you? No. Do whatever you feel comfortable doing. And I do think training age will come into it massively. But what's hard to separate in the literature is kind of, all from anecdotal evidence, is as you get more kind of well versed in training, your ability to execute and train with intensity is much better than when you first start out. So you're naturally going to progress your training, your proximity to failure, and your ability to go closer to failure as you get kind of deeper in the trenches as such. Like when you first start out, you're kind of a bit like a Bambi on ice. So,
oh god, yeah.
But there again, like giving that person to say like go until you can't do anymore might be a good metric to be able to sort them out for some progression, as long as you're managing recovery and all of that stuff. And I mean, it's quite a hard question to answer, isn't it? Because there's so many facets within it that you need to cover, which really you can't cover. And what you really need to cover is like coach that person towards that decision, like gather data on them and write their program, see what they respond well to. Do you know what I mean? It can't be something that you can just, it's not a black and white answer, is it? And I don't think it should be. I think it should be an acceptance of both approaches can elicit a great response. It's completely personal. Oh, that cliche is person dependent.
Well, it massively is, because like you said, you'll have some clients that like training to failure, some that don't. Typically, if you're training to failure, you need to be more aware of your total volume per session. Some people just don't enjoy having to limit the amount of volume that they do. Like I'll have someone that I may be like, okay, we'll try training to failure, and then they'll ask for more volume because they didn't feel like they're doing enough. And then that's then where it's quite difficult to assess not what the definition of failure is, but potentially how far into failure are they trying to push themselves. Exactly. So then, as you said, yeah, it's very person specific, and as a coach, you just need to be able to adjust when necessary.
Exactly, and don't just have a one size fits all model, because Doris does not need to train to failure.
She does not.
No, geez, if you're Doris and you're 21, but most of the time a Doris is above 80. Right, next question.
Next question. How to develop the athlete mindset? I will let you start with this because I know you're very passionate about this.
Yeah, man. Like I think it's a good question. It's from a client again, because I've been talking about the athlete mindset a lot in my social media at the moment, and I think people get turned on and turned off by it. I mean, it doesn't have to be an all year thing. It doesn't have to be a 24-hour thing. If you're me, it's a 24-hour thing. But it's something that I'm trying to develop in my clients so that they can flip into that athlete mindset when they need to, so that they can make better progress in the long run. Because realistically, all of our clients are committing time to training. So why not make that training, all the things that make the needle move further within your physique development, optimized so that they can work better and you can do less of them. And this pulls back to the first point. It's like a lot of people struggle with kind of change and physique development because they feel like it's overwhelming. But really, it's just very simple things done consistently and done very well. And if you can flip your mindset towards that of an athlete, that right, these are non-negotiables, and I'm just going to do them. You can ride out motivation highs and lows. You can ride out periods where you're training like shit. You can ride out periods where you don't want to do anything. And that's the magic place, because then you've got like a runway for actual just to reach your full potential as an athlete. And I appreciate that athlete is a word that might not fit with everyone, but like I said, it's not like a label that sticks with you forever. It's just like right now I'm approaching my training like an athlete. And I think AJ Morris talks about this a lot. Like he switches to that athlete mode where he does all his work in the morning, where he's like coach mode, and then he goes to athlete mode. And I do think that's really important, to view yourself as, it's almost like a self-obsessed, quite a self-obsessed approach. And I do support it. Like right now is the time for me to think about me, and I'm going to approach this as an athlete, like it's my job, like it's my income. And it's just a mindset shift that really will help a lot of people, because a lot of people see training as a burden. Well, when you first start out, general population, people see it as like a massive change and a burden to their life. If you can flip that mindset quick to something that's benefiting your life, and it is your duty to be there and give it everything and efficiently do 4 things across the day to funnel into that progress, again, you're creating a snowball effect that will really like drive up performance and your results, which is why we're here. We're not just here to kind of tick the box of going to the gym and doing a Bulgarian split squat. Like, we're trying to actually develop our physique. So that's what I think on kind of the athlete mindset. It is just kind of like that relentless nature in certain things. And again, it's a spectrum. You don't have to be as relentless as me, optimizing everything. But if you optimize, if you're in a dieting phase, you optimize your calorie intake, your activity, and your training. That's all you need to optimize. It's not a big ask. 3 things within a 24-hour period. Like most people can do that. Most people in their jobs do optimize like 30 things for their boss, but when it comes to themselves, they can't seem to clasp onto the idea of getting control over 3 things. And I think that mindset shift, it needs to happen sooner rather than later, for most people. But that's me.
I think it's towards holding yourself to a much higher standard. I think people,
yes, exactly, and like
potentially
people underestimate what they can do. Like 100%.
Yeah,
It's just a calorie goal. It's just eating food or not eating food. It's just doing a workout or not doing a workout. You can choose to do that well or terribly. That is completely within your control. And like, it frustrates me so much when you see like people who've gone to the gym for like 10 years and they're still benching the same stuff. It's like, what? I understand that like gym might be you ticking a box, but like you're spending an hour there every day. Like let's do it better. Any other walk of life, you would be doing that better. Like, I don't know, like if you spend an hour on a video game a day, you'd hope to be better at that video game down the line. Do you know what I mean? But
I don't know what you mean. I've been playing that same Super Mario since like
exactly
1994.
level 1. Like, do you know what I mean? It's just like you'd expect to be better, so why not expect better of yourself in the gym? Sorry, mate, I cut you off.
No, that's true. I think that's a very good point. I just think a lot of people are too easy potentially to cut themselves slack and be more lenient on themselves, when in reality, at the end of the day, like it's your body. Why would you not want to, even outside of just the gym progression, the eating progression, all of that will have a huge knock-on effect of how you feel, how active you are, how you can pick something up without hurting yourself. Like there are so many knock-on effects through holding yourself to a slightly higher standard that I don't understand fully why some people almost let themselves off the hook. Because definitely, I know when I let that mindset slip slightly, or I'm a little bit more lenient than I should be with food, I'll have a huge knock-on effect with energy levels, digestion, mood.
And the minute you experience that and can recognize it is the minute you kind of do adopt the athlete mindset, because you realize it's, for me, it's not worth it. Like not getting not getting enough sleep is just not worth it for me. Like I know the knock-on effect, and that is my choice then. That is my choice. Like I completely understand people go out drinking. That's just not me. Like I choose to not do that. And I choose to kind of have meal timings. I choose to have a step count in the off season. I choose to do cardio on Christmas Day. And I'm not saying that's kind of for everyone, but it's asking more of myself. And I think just striving to be better in that respect is massive. And I think better is different for everyone, which is a big thing. Don't kind of compare yourselves to other people. Just set parameters for yourself and try and kind of outperform who you were yesterday and the day before in the gym, outside of the gym. And I think you'll be well on the way to that.
Well, I think it's in a Atomic Habits where they talk about trying to be 1% better every day. Even if you just do one thing every day, their initial example was every day for a year. At the end of the year, I think they quantified it into being like you're 37% better. But if you just do that to like Monday to Friday, 40 weeks a year, give yourself some time off, you're still going to be 20% better. Like it doesn't take much to do one small little thing that over time will accumulate into a bigger impact.
Exactly. And like, yeah, I could talk about this all day, but I think if you do want more on that, like go back to the podcast that was out with the week before this, which was about motivation. And a lot of that it delves into kind of the athlete mindset, because most of that literature that I look at reviews it within athletes, which is quite interesting. So go and check that out if you haven't. That one's wrapped up then, mate. Have we got any more? Is there one more?
Short and sweet. When would we rotate through exercises?
You can go on this one, mate.
I typically would try and keep things fairly consistent. Definitely is not a week to week, session by session rotation.
It's not a sexy
to give at least some sort of variation. Oh, but training isn't sexy.
No.
Having kind of 2 rotations, you get that little bit additional variation if that's what people are looking for. But ideally, by sticking to the same exercises for a block or 2, you can try and progress them as much as possible. That's the easiest way to then quantify progression. If you've increased reps, if you've increased weights, you've gotten better at that. If you get to the end of, I don't know, the second block, and those final 3 weeks have just stayed the same or regressed, that's then when there's time to potentially address changing it, change the movement pattern, change to a machine if it's a free weight. So I think at least give it a good enough run, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, to see if you can maximize progression there before then trying to change.
Yeah, I think like most people don't need to change exercises for a long time. Like, unless you're very strong already, you've got a lot of strength progression realistically. I think the main reason I find that I rotate clients' exercises is to keep them engaged in the training program. And that is a shit answer, but that is very often adherence is the key factor in people growing muscle. And if Dave needs a new training program every 12 weeks to stay engaged and enjoying the process of growing muscle, I'm more than happy to do it. In an ideal world, if I was programming for like me and you, I would have us on the same split literally until you could not add another kilogram to that list. Because a lot of the times, all you're really then doing when you do change in exercise is finding another variation of that pattern. To then give you that linear progression runway again, which is what you spoke about. And the non-sexy answer is that you should just probably do it until you literally cannot progress it anymore. But there's ways around things not progressing. Like you could add another set and then you're automatically progressing and then you wouldn't need to rotate the exercise. So again, is it as simple as just kind of rotating yes or no? Probably not. There's a number of programming considerations that you need to think about. But like you said, like normally for most people, like 12 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, it might start to stall. Another reason I would rotate things out is if you are picking up niggles from an exercise, because that will happen after a while. Like if you really are hammering that progression and progression starts to stall, either you will progress again or your body will regress. is something that I reckon. And you probably found that on the hack when you hurt your knee a little bit. Like,
Oh god, yeah.
it was that moment, right? Now let's progress one more rep. Your body was like, I can't do that. So you picked up a niggle. So that's when I'd potentially look at rotating it. You haven't rotated it, so that says something about your mindset.
I did, however, I addressed this slightly differently. So that's when I took, to me, a slightly more like proactive deload. So I took 4 days off training over Christmas, rested as much as possible, tried to work a little bit on, especially like mobility in my quads. And when I went back into the same, so I redid the session yesterday. I kind of warmed up slightly more thoroughly, made sure my knees were good, my quads were good, went in and progressed far ahead, didn't have any knee issues. Sweet.
And again, that's the athlete mindset. That's like not sticking your finger at the exercise and saying the exercise is like, I'm so strong now, this exercise is not for me. Right. Did you actually nail your mobility that week before? No. Did you warm up properly? No. Was nutrition optimal? It might have been. We don't know. I don't know, but it could have been slightly off. Did you sleep well the night before? Yes or no? Did you get enough sleep? Stuff like that. And then it's like, do you actually need to rotate an exercise? Probably not. It's, what I mean, it's one of those ones. Like I said, like I'll be the first to change a program if someone's not enjoying it, because people are paying me to enjoy training, and if they don't like an exercise and they get on a bit bored of it, I can see why people want to change exercises, but I will never let them change anything below kind of a 6 to 8 week period. If they do want to change for that, there needs to be a valid reason. Like the mechanics are not working for them as an individual, they're picking up niggles, or they don't like it. If you don't like it, you won't do it, and just crack on. I will swallow my pride then. That was that wrapped up, mate. So that's the end of the pod. That was a little Q&A around 45-minute mark, so that was a good one. Thank you for listening. Again, we have coaching slots available, so if you've got this far, get in touch with us via the links in the description. That can be through the website or just messages on social media. If you do like the pod, give us a like on YouTube, give us a review on Spotify, because you can review on Spotify now, which is cool. So that would be amazing. We'd greatly appreciate it. And on Apple Pods, if you could give us a review as well. But other than that, I hope everyone has had a good Christmas. I hope Rowan and the listeners has a good new year, whatever you are doing.
Thank you,
and
sir.
we'll see you in the next one. Over and out. Peace and love.
Amazing. Take it easy, guys.